Hour number 3, Dr. Steve Pieczenik is our guest. Formerly wrote the book in psychological warfare for the State Department, has consulted and worked for 5 presidents, heading up major departments at the Department of State under Kissinger and many others. And he joins us for the rest of the hour. I know we got loaded phones. Your calls are coming up. I want to get into the out-of-control establishment that Mr. Pieczenik's been talking about and the danger of their hubris. We're going to be speaking with him in a moment. Also, I want to finish up with his geopolitical outlook and what's really happening in the Middle East. But he said something very astute for stations that don't carry that first 5 minutes. Very astute. I said, I mean, obviously astute, but he really cut to the heart of it. I said, why did they stage this at the core? And obviously there's domestic reasons for re-election, police state, the defense complex, once it's no-bid contracts, it's trillions. I mean, there's a cornucopia of reasons. The globalists, the engineers of society always go with something if it hits on all cylinders for them, if it helps them on a multifaceted, multivariate level. But I said, what's the core reason for this shoddy, ridiculous, bin Laden's been killed fable internationally? And obviously it's to now menace Pakistan, put pressure on them, but that's only part of it. He said it's Iran. It's a message that, look how ridiculous this is. We don't care. We will set you up. We will attack you if you don't stop sending your people in trying to influence things in Bahrain, things, of course, in Lebanon and other areas. And he said it's a message to them. It's meant for governments to be able to decipher it because it's so ham-fisted. Now, I wanted to raise this, and we actually had We Are Change 2 years ago. It's in, now 3 years ago, it's in my Cinema Verite documentary about 9/11 Truth Rising, the 911 Chronicles. Gary Hart got confronted about this, but he wrote a letter September 26, 2007, via the Huffington Post, but also had it sent to the Iranian embassy overseas, because they don't have one here. Unsolicited advice for the government of Iran. And he said, and you can go read the letter, he said, presuming that you are not actually ignorant enough to desire war with the United States, you might be well advised to read the history of the sinking of the USS Maine in Havana Harbor in 1898 and the history of the Gulf of Tonkin in 1964. And he goes on to say, we stage terror attacks, and we'll stage them again. Do what you're told, or we will nuke you. Now, Hart thinks we're so dumb. This was a letter for their intelligence people. But when some migrate activist friends at We Are Change brought it up, he said, I never wrote that letter. And they said, here he is. And he kind of freaked out. And he goes, yeah, I did write that. And that is what I meant. So, again, these globalists, they communicate with each other like adults. But for us, they tell us bin Laden's still alive, Easter Bunny's real, Lucky Charms is real, Keebler elves are real. But this is exactly what Dr. Pieczenik was just saying. Here's Hart, this big, top CFR globalist, skittering around with the whole 9/11 operation, because I saw him publicly bragging on Hardball 2 months before 9/11, saying things are about to change, ha, ha, ha. And Matthews were having a little inside chuckle with each other, because these psychopaths like to brag publicly. But continuing, Dr. Pieczenik, that's exactly what you just said without me even raising this. What's your take on what I just read to you?
Well, what you said is correct. What's basically happening is that we are at war without, the president literally saying we are at war in a very serious situation, which, unfortunately, I have to say this, that Secretary of Defense Gates is probably the most serious member of this entire administration, as he was of the Bush Jr. Actually, there are many of us who worked for Bush Sr. who really insisted on Gates coming in and getting rid of Rumsfeld for the simple reason that this man was director of the CIA. He was a very non-ideological man, extremely intelligent, extremely oriented to understanding what America needs, not what the political requirements are in terms of the politicians. And we are now in a very serious confrontation with Iran, because the Iranians have, without a question, created a lot of disturbances both in Syria and with the Syrians. Bashar Assad, who's also a physician, by the way. It's interesting, we physicians are in the business of counterterrorism everywhere around the world. So I warned the Obama administration, if they don't give us reimbursements at the right place, we all go into terrorism. That's a joke. But nevertheless, we really have a problem because Bahrain is there and Saudi Arabia is there now. The issue is, it would have been nice, as you said, if the people on top would explain a thesis of what we are doing and where we are going. We also have an economic war right now with China, which is quite serious, which gets to the issue of what you said about we are purposely dropping the dollar. I mean, the Federal Reserve, whatever else can be said about Bernanke, is correctly dropping the dollar in order to go into economic warfare. For 10 years at the National War College, I have requested economic warfare because it is the most effective mechanism that we in the United States have to undermine the Chinese economy, which is totally controlled, totally corrupt, and allows us to bring back our manufacturing and our productivity and reinvent what we are best at, which no other country in the world can do, which is entrepreneurship. And basically, this lowering of the dollar is a way to say to the Chinese, you better watch us because we're going to undercut everything you have right now. And as you've seen in China right now, there have been riots. In a normal year in China, that's normal for them, there are over 75,000 riots. Right now, they have riots of cab drivers that are refusing to work, bus drivers are refusing to work. They know that the American government is stimulating, creating activities, and the Chinese better listen carefully. We are capable of taking down China if we want to. When I was in China 5 years ago, the first question they asked me, because they knew I was an expert in regime change, I don't need military to regime change. I've done 4 or 5 regime changes, Soviet Union, Aldo Moro, Panama, Cambodia, with far more lethal targets, where they asked me, and I was there on a business trip, Alex. As you know, I'm really a businessman. And they asked me, the first question was, are you here to take us down? And obviously I looked at them, and this was one of the heads of the intelligence community, and I said no. But clearly, I knew exactly the determinants of where they could be taken down. And now, in the presence of these kids with the Middle East disruption, with the Facebooks, with the Twitter, they know that they're very vulnerable. And one of the issues that we have right now, and I think correctly, is that we are talking with the Chinese to warn them, number one, you better raise the yuan because we want to get rid of a lot of that debt that is owed, that we owe to you. We want to clear the deck of that. That's the easiest way to do it. Secondly, you better address the issues of middle class rising. And thirdly, you better address the issues of human rights. If we have Christian missionaries there, don't disrupt them. Don't arrest people who want freedom. So we have 2 fronts that are going on, but nobody's explaining that to the American public. On the one hand, we have a war that's going on that's really targeted to Iran, and really a war between the Shiites and the Sunni, where we're trying to support the Sunnis, while at the same time, here's the irony of everything, my friend, without getting too much above it, is that we have had to cut deals. The military, our U.S. military, is a very brave organization, but they're also very smart. They had to cut deals with the Iranians in order to control part of Afghanistan and to control Iraq. In order to do that, we had to tie down the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, while at the same time, we have to show them that we can go in there at any time we want and create disturbances. Now, what makes this even more interesting is that Ahmadinejad, who's the president of Iran, everybody thinks he's crazy. I don't. He was a very effective, he's a PhD in civil engineering, was a very effective leader. He is now in an internal battle with Khamenei.
They're now claiming that his top advisors are devil worshippers.
That's correct. Well, I don't know whether they're devil worshippers, but they're certainly not the most intelligent, brightest, effective guys.
Well, let me just stop you. Let me just stop you because that, Doc, let me just stop because that sounds crazy. Guys, pull up the London Guardian from Sunday. The headline is Ahmadinejad's deputies charged with conjuring jinns. You can't make this up. That's what the Islamic regime, who decides if you can run for president, that's what they're charging his people with, is divination. That's it.
Yeah, no. Let me just say this.
But it sounds crazy, so I have to let folks know I didn't make that up.
Let me just tell you, there's an internal battle going on in Iran. They hear us. They're listening to us. We're trying to affect that internal battle, we, the United States, by positioning our forces and trying to attack and limit the number of agents they're sending overseas. That's all I'm saying. I'm not getting into the belief systems or worship.
I understand. What's going on in Libya? What's going on in Libya?
Libya has been a mistake. What happened in Libya is we had a lot of companies, including Halliburton, John Deere, a lot of the oil companies were in there. But primarily, we have no strategic interest in Libya. Libya is really a strategic interest only to one country more than any, and that is Italy. Italy has about 40 to 50% of its oil through ENI coming in through Libya. So the disturbances that were occurring in Libya was really a spillover from Egypt, and ironically, as you mentioned before, we brought back some of the Al-Qaeda members from Afghanistan and Pakistan, and one of them was interviewed publicly saying, actually in the New York Times, what do you feel about America now? He said, well, before I was 100% against America, but now that America is supplying us with special forces, ammunition, and the Egyptians are helping us, I'm only 50% against America. So you can understand what's happening now is a world where everything is very gray. That's the point. And what you're saying to the audience, and what we do agree, is why don't you explain this to the American public? Stop treating us as if we're dummies. Maybe we can't absorb all of it at one time. Maybe we don't want to hear it. But stop treating us like dummies because, number one, we have to pay for all of this. Number two, it's getting out of hand. Number three, we have to leave from Iraq and Afghanistan. And number four, the only national security issue that's really relevant to any of us Americans is our national debt and the economy.
All right, we're going to take calls for a while, but then we're going to get into the debt, banking before you leave us, and false flag terror. Dr. Steve Pieczenik is our guest. I'm Alex Jones, Infowars.com. StevePieczenik.com is his site. Ask yourselves, what are you doing in this time of great challenge? What are you doing to unlock minds?